Okay, get this. What if escaping a locked room was the key to acing your civics class?
Well, it turns out some educators in Taiwan actually put that to the test.
Oh, this is right up my alley. I'm already intrigued, but hold on.
Yeah.
Before we get lost in the legal jargon, let's make sure we're all picturing the same thing here.
Right.
When we say escape room, we're not talking about, like, detention, are we?
Haha. No, not quite. Picture a real-life puzzle game, you know?
Uh-huh.
You and your friends are locked in this themed room, gotta work together, like crack codes, solve riddles, you know the deal, to break out before the timer hits 0.
I'm getting, like, a cross between a scavenger hunt and one of those brain teaser apps.
Yeah, exactly. But with a lot more on the line.
Okay. I can kind of see how that setup would get kids way more pumped about learning than, say, my 8th grade civics class.
Well, that's exactly the problem these researchers were trying to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Civics, let's face it, it's not known for being the most, shall we say, thrilling subject.
You're telling me. I barely remember what I learned back then.
Right, so they thought, what if, instead of just memorizing names and dates, kids had to actually use that knowledge to, save the day?
Okay, that's a pretty genius twist. So did they, like, build an actual escape room for this experiment, or what?
Actually, they went digital. They used this platform called Holio.
So the students are playing through this escape room on their phones or computers.
Exactly.
So no actual locked doors, hidden keys, that kind of thing.
Nope. But they kept all the good stuff, the ticking clock, the interconnected puzzles that need to be, like, really on point with your communication.
Okay, I can picture it now. This group of 8th graders all huddled around, like frantically tapping away at their screens.
Yep.
But the big question is, how do they actually work the civics content into the escape room?
All right, so here's where it gets really clever. They didn't just, slap some facts onto random puzzles.
Mm.
The challenges were specifically designed so the students had to use their knowledge of things like, rights, laws, government, all that good stuff,
Yeah.
to actually progress.
So give me an example. What kind of challenge are we talking about here?
Like, in one challenge, they had the students take on the roles of lawyers,
Ooh, interesting.
arguing a case. They had to actually use their knowledge of legal concepts like burden of proof to analyze evidence and figure out how to win.
That's way cooler than just reading about it in a textbook.
Right. And that hands-on element, that's where the magic happens,
Yeah,
It
totally.
makes the learning active. It forces them to, really think critically and apply what they're learning.
Okay, I'm sold on the concept. But the big question, the one we all really want to know is, did it actually work?
The results. Well, it's not quite as simple as, escape room kids aced the test, everyone else failed.
I figured.
They were measuring a few different things.
Okay.
Motivation, of course, but also critical thinking skills and this fascinating thing called flow experience.
Flow experience, what's that? That's some kind of secret educational weapon.
More of a mental state, really. You know that feeling when you're completely absorbed in something, like time just disappears?
Oh, yeah, totally. Like when I'm lost in a good book or I'm working on something I actually enjoy.
That's it. You're in the zone, completely focused, effortlessly making progress. That's flow. And the escape room kids, they reported feeling this way more than the other group.
Interesting. So they were engaged, they were in the zone, but did any of that translate into actual, learning?
Right. So for that, we got to look at the specific areas they were measuring.
Okay.
While the escape room didn't lead to massive improvements in every single critical thinking skill,
Uh-huh.
there were 2 areas where those kids really stood out.
Okay. I'm on the edge of my seat. Which two?
Assumption and interpretation. Basically, they got way better at understanding the underlying assumptions behind information and at critically interpreting what they were seeing.
Maybe that's because in an escape room, you're constantly having to, like, question what you think you know and look at things from all these different angles to find the solution.
Exactly. It's like the unique challenges of the escape room were actually strengthening very specific cognitive skills.
So it's not just fun and games. There's a real brain workout happening here.
Exactly.
Okay, but then why didn't they see improvements in all areas of critical thinking? Was it just like a time thing or what?
That's a great question, and it leads us to one of the limitations of this study.
Okay.
Remember, this was a pretty short experiment. They only had a few sessions with the escape room. It's totally possible that with longer exposure, they might have seen wider improvements in critical thinking.
Yeah, like anything else, you need practice to really develop a skill.
Exactly. So this wasn't like a magic wand that instantly turned them into critical thinking masters, but
Okay.
It definitely hints at the incredible potential escape rooms have for making learning more powerful.
So we left off talking about how these researchers actually designed their digital escape room.
Oh, yeah, it gets really interesting. They didn't just throw a bunch of puzzles together and call it a day. Oh, no.
Oh, I was picturing, like, Sudoku with a side of the Bill of Rights.
Not quite. They actually use this model called the ARCS model.
Okay.
It stands for Attention, Relevance, Confidence, and Satisfaction.
Hmm. So that's how they made sure the puzzles weren't just fun, but actually helped the students learn.
Right. Like, remember I mentioned that lawyer challenge?
Yeah, the one where the kids had to argue a case.
Exactly. They weren't just looking for clues. They had to use their knowledge of, like, burden of proof and due process to analyze the evidence.
So the puzzles were really forcing them to apply what they were learning about civics in a practical way.
Exactly. And that's where the ARCS model comes in.
Okay, break it down for me.
By making the challenges super relevant to real-world scenarios and giving the students a sense of control, they actually boosted their confidence.
Confidence leads to satisfaction. Satisfaction leads to...
Better learning. You got it.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. It's like they were creating this really engaging experience, but they were also sneaking in the learning objectives.
Yep. But let's not forget about that whole flow experience thing.
Right. Flow experience.
That feeling of getting totally lost in something.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier.
Well, there's a whole world of research on that, spearheaded by this psychologist, Csikszentmihalyi.
Csikszentmihalyi. Okay, that's going to take me a few tries. But his work is fascinating.
Right. He found that flow happens when there's this perfect balance between, like, how challenging something is and your skill level.
Makes sense. If it's too easy, you get bored. If it's too hard, you just want to give up.
Exactly. But when it's just right, bam, you hit that flow state.
And the escape room managed to do that.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
The challenge was engaging, but not impossible.
And with all the excitement and novelty of the escape room format.
They were primed for that flow state, completely immersed in learning without even realizing it.
That's amazing, like tricking your brain into learning.
Kinda. It shows how powerful games can be in education, you know? Tap into those natural instincts, the drive for challenge, and boom, you've got a recipe for effective learning.
I mean, this all sounds like we should just turn every classroom into an escape room. But got to be realistic, right? There has to be some drawbacks to this approach.
You're right. No approach is perfect. And one thing the researchers pointed out was the size of the study.
It was just one group of 8th graders in Taiwan, right?
Exactly. So we need to be careful about, like, assuming this would work the exact same way for every student everywhere.
Makes sense. What works in one context might not translate to another.
Right. And they also admitted the escape room didn't boost every single aspect of critical thinking.
Right. Just those two, assumption and interpretation.
Which makes me wonder, though.
Yeah.
Could those two actually have, like, a ripple effect on other critical thinking skills?
That's an interesting thought.
Like, maybe by getting better at questioning assumptions, the students might start to see improvements in other areas down the line.
It's like a long-term investment in critical thinking.
Exactly. And this was just focused on civics, you know? Think about the possibilities for other subjects: history, science, math, even learning languages.
Whoa, my mind is already racing with ideas.
Yeah.
What if you had to use historical events to escape from a certain time period?
Or a science escape room where you have to conduct experiments to, like, stop a virtual outbreak.
Okay, my inner child is screaming with joy right now. But practicality check. Designing all these escape rooms would take a ton of time, resources, teacher training.
Yeah, that's a valid concern.
Is it even realistic to expect teachers to pull this off on top of everything else they have to do?
Well, that's where collaboration and some good old-fashioned ingenuity come in. Imagine, like, a library of pre-made escape room templates that teachers could adapt.
Ooh, that takes the pressure off having to invent everything from scratch.
Right. And what if we got students involved in the design process?
Oh, that's a great idea.
They'd be learning and making sure the experience is actually engaging for their age group.
Talk about killing two birds with one stone.
Right. But with all this excitement, we also have to talk about the ethical side of things.
Oh, yeah, good point. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, right?
We can't just throw new technology at a problem without thinking about the potential downsides.
We have to make sure these escape rooms are inclusive, that they're accessible for all learners, that they're not, like, accidentally pushing a certain agenda.
Exactly. We need more research, more conversations like this one to figure out how to use this tool responsibly.
It's a journey, not a destination, right? But even with all the challenges, this is giving me a lot of hope for the future of education.
Me too. Escape rooms might not be the answer to everything, but they do show us a new way to make learning more engaging, more hands-on, maybe even fun.
I'm saying it. They sound fun.
Haha, exactly. So, to all our listeners out there, yeah, how could you use these escape room principles in your classroom, your workplace, or even just your own personal life? What escape could you design for yourself?
All right, we've been geeking out about escape rooms and how they could shake up education.
Totally.
But let's zoom out for a sec.
Yeah.
Big picture, what does all this actually mean? Could we actually make learning feel less like, well, a chore?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right. I mean, we've all had those classes where it felt like pulling teeth to get through the material.
Tell me about it.
But escape rooms, it's like you almost can't help but be engaged. You're invested. You want to crack the code.
Exactly. That's that intrinsic motivation we were talking about. Remember Csikszentmihalyi and that flow state?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Escape rooms seem practically designed to trigger it. The challenge, the clear goals, the constant feedback.
It's like all the ingredients for deep engagement are baked right in.
Right.
Which makes me wonder, is this just a good fit for subjects that, like, naturally have puzzles, civics, history, that kind of thing? Could we stretch it further? Like, could you even do an escape room for math?
No, that's a challenge, but I don't think it's impossible.
Right.
Instead of just memorizing formulas, what if math became about figuring out a sequence of steps, you know?
Ooh, like you need to calculate the trajectory to launch a rocket in a game or something.
Exactly. The math skills are still there, but it's all about the context.
Suddenly, it's not just abstract numbers. It's a tool to actually do something cool.
Right.
I'm having flashbacks to high school math class, wishing it had been more like that. But okay, back to reality for a sec. Even if we love the idea, there are practical limits, right?
Oh, for sure.
Not every school can build these elaborate escape rooms.
True, but luckily, technology can help bridge that gap.
Yeah.
The study we talked about, that was all digital.
Right.
So even classrooms without a ton of space or resources can still participate.
And then there's that idea we talked about earlier, a library of escape room templates that teachers could use.
Yeah, takes the pressure off, right?
Huge time saver. And what if we got students in on the design process?
Oh, yes. Not only would they be learning, but they'd be the ones tailoring the experience to what actually works for them.
Talk about engagement. But before we get too carried away and declare escape rooms the solution to all of education's problems,
Right.
we did touch on some potential downsides. It's not all fun and games.
Definitely not. A big one is making sure everyone has equal access.
Yeah.
We don't want this to become yet another advantage for schools that already have more resources.
Absolutely. Whether it's digital access or just the time and training teachers need, it has to be a level playing field.
And even beyond access, there's the design aspect.
Right.
Just like any educational tool, escape rooms can be done well or they can be done badly.
It's like that saying, right? A hammer can build a house or it can break a window. The tool itself isn't good or bad, it's how you use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we need research, we need these conversations to figure out how to do this right, how to use this tool in a way that actually benefits students.
Lots to think about. But after this deep dive, I gotta say, I'm feeling optimistic.
Me too.
Escape rooms might not be a magic solution to all of education's challenges, but they do offer a fresh perspective.
Totally.
They show us that learning can be engaging, it can be relevant, it can even be, dare I say it, fun.
Go for it. If this inspires even a few teachers to try something new, to spark that curiosity in their students, that's a win in my book.
Couldn't agree more. So, to our listeners out there, we'll leave you with this. How could you apply these escape room principles in your classroom, your work, even just your own life? What escape could you design for yourself?
Keep those brains working, keep that curiosity alive, and until next time, keep on exploring.
That's it for this deep dive, folks. Thanks for joining us.